In the news this week, Federal Treasurer lobbied for corporate tax cuts despite doubts of positive economic outcome.
Plus, will it work? New push to reduce youth smoking by increasing the legal age to 21.
And on Western Perspective, using smart technology smarter, protecting your privacy in the digital technology world.
This is the Evening News with Ivan Leung and Danielle Staniskov.
Good evening. Federal Treasurer Scott Morrison has declared corporate tax cuts urgent as competing economies prepare to slash theirs to accelerate economic growth. However, financial experts say this will do nothing to help wage growth or encourage spending in Australia. Elise Simic reports.
Corporate tax rates were cut 2 years ago, however there are now calls to reduce them further. This is to increase Australia's competitiveness with other governments, such as the US, after Donald Trump suggested similar cuts in September.
The Turnbull government has cut personal income taxes and we've cut company taxes. We've done that because we believe that's the way to ensure there is greater incentive for people to invest and to do more in the economy.
However, experts say the tax cuts have not translated into an increase in spending or an increase in wage growth. Businesses are cutting costs and paying down loans while the interest rate is low. Experts believe decreasing this tax further will not change that.
We already have that reduction in tax for small businesses from 30% down to 27.5% at the moment, and it will drop to 25% over the next 10 years. And that hasn't increased in any sense demand in businesses and flow in the economy.
One of the questions raised is which companies will be benefited in a tax cut. Currently, large companies can take advantage of the tax regimes in the countries they have stakes in. Elise Simic for WAMN News.
There are calls to increase the legal smoking age to 21 years old following a suggestion by mining magnate Andrew Forrest. His comments have triggered debates as to whether this initiative will reduce smoking among youths. Reporter Kelly Smith joins us with more details. Kelly.
Yes, Danielle. Mr Forrest is pushing the state government to raise the legal smoking age to 21, saying this measure will save 15,000 lives and $20 billion in healthcare costs per year. But Deputy Premier and Health Minister Roger Cook says it's not a measure they're considering at this stage.
It's not a measure that we're looking at this stage, but we are looking at reviewing the Tobacco Products Control Act as part of an ongoing review of that Act to make sure that we can continue to reduce the impact, the harmful impact that tobacco has on our community.
Meanwhile, Kelly Kennington from the Cancer Council stated anything that can be done to delay smoking in young people will be supported.
Each year, smoking costs billions to the WA community, not just in direct healthcare costs, but in social costs as well. So any measures to reduce smoking is going to have an enormous benefit to the WA community.
The government says this is a complex issue that will not be solved by a single measure. Instead, a range of initiatives will be needed to drive down the use of tobacco in the community. Ivan, back to you.
Kelly, thank you. Sea Shepherd Australia is urging frustrated surfers and fishermen to avoid taking matters into their own hands by hunting great white sharks. There have been reports of vigilante actions against sharks by locals in Esperance following several shark sightings in recent weeks. Environmental volunteers says great white sharks are a protected species which are crucial for our survival, and it's highly illegal to harm them.
We don't have people climbing Everest in the middle of winter. We don't have kite surfers out when there's a cyclone around. So likewise, surfers should think responsibly. Is this a good time to go surfing when maybe salmon are running or there are a lot of whales going by the coastline?
In a shock High Court decision over the dual citizenship debacle, Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce, Liberal MP Fiona Nash and 3 other federal members were disqualified from Parliament. Meanwhile, Nick Xenophon and Matt Canavan have not been disqualified. Political experts say this could cause extra instability within the Turnbull government as they may lose their majority.
Certainly in a position where they'll have half the numbers, and with the vote of the Speaker of the House will be able to eventually get legislation through, but it's going to make life a lot more difficult for them, certainly in the lower house, until the by-election is run.
It's understood that Julie Bishop has become the Deputy Prime Minister for the time being.
The opposition says they will not be blocking Labour's new legislation to allow the ministers to sack individual councillors. The Premier made it clear that the legislation will be drafted and introduced later this year, so Lord Mayor Lisa Scafidi could be dismissed retrospectively and councillors could be sacked in the future for indiscretion. Liberal MP Tony Kristovic accused Ms McGowan of mismanaging the state's priorities by drafting the legislation.
Last week in Parliament we were debating the lack of time available for the parliamentary drafters to introduce legislation around the statute of limitations, around the victims of sex offenders, and unfortunately the Premier doesn't seem to have time to draft that legislation, but he has time to draft other legislation like trying to sack the Lord Mayor of the City of Perth.
Catalan has declared independence from Spain after a snap vote in its regional parliament. The motion was passed with 70 votes yes and 10 votes no. Following the ballot, Spanish Prime Minister has called an urgent cabinet meeting, with Madrid given a direct rule over the region and dissolved the regional parliament. The European Union and the United States throw their support behind Spain calling for national unity. US President Donald Trump has blocked the release of classified documents on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Explaining his decision, Mr. Trump says he has no choice as the release of those documents can bring potentially irreversible harm to national security. The president has placed the unreleased files under a 6-month review following a last-minute debate with the CIA and the FBI.
And finally this week, representatives from police and emergency services gathered at Mandurah to commence the countdown of the Australasian Police and Emergency Services Games. The ceremony was held this weekend with organisers expecting 3,000 competitors from 10 countries to compete with each other. The games are held every 2 years with a torch relay lighting ceremony conducted in Mandurah.
I expect that we're going to be oversubscribed actually. I think that it'll be a wonderful opportunity, not just for my own officers, but for people that within Australasia, Asia itself, coming through to Mandurah. Many people may not have visited here before. I expect it's actually going to have a real legacy.
And that's our weekly news and current affairs. You can catch the latest news on our website and Facebook. Have a good one.
Until 5:30 next Sunday. Thanks for your company. Good night.